Recording. Hi, this is Women Painters West monthly general meeting, and we have Anne Kupillas. Did I say that right?
Almost.
Demonstrating for us today, and I'm going to let Annie do an introduction.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
I'm
okay.
on.
So I'm very happy to have Anne with me. First, she is a Long Beach artist. And, no, I'm not always inviting Long Beach artists, but have invited a few. So I have known Anne, I think, at the Long Beach Open Studio or something like this, and I admired her watercolor at that time. But right now, I think she's doing a little more different things, but she'll explain it better than I do. So she's a member of different things, but I'm not going to read everything, uh, as we are all members of many things. And she has done. And we teach at the same place at the art supply warehouse in Westminster. So, but she teaches more than I do. I love the way she does watercolor, because I know more her watercolors than the other thing, because it's very free, and it looks like it's done very fast. And I think that's for watercolors, it's the best thing when it's done fast and good, of course. So I let her speak about her artistic life.
And
Thank
Mary,
you.
sorry, Anne, your co-host now, so you can share your screen when you're ready.
Okay. Oh, that's so great. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Annie. And thank you to everybody for coming today and for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to WPW and be amongst you wonderful women artists. It's great what women supporting other women, of course. So thank you. Yeah. So as Annie said, I'm Anne Kupillas, and I am primarily a watercolor artist, but I'm also an instructor, and I'm also working in different media. So I'm a full-time artist, and I kind of I know we all have our different journeys and our different stories. I came to being a full-time artist the long way, the hard way, as I think some might say. So I wanted to talk to you about that today, and sort of tell you about how I came to watercolor and how I came to, I would say, being a full-time artist, and then a little bit about what I'm working on today. So is it all right if we hold questions until the end, or would you guys prefer, if you have questions, to ask them throughout? How do you usually do it here?
It's whatever you prefer, Anne.
Throughout, I think.
Okay, why don't you guys interrupt me then if you have any burning questions? Okay. So I did a little PowerPoint for us. As you can see, I'm in my studio, so you can see some of my artwork, and I think I'm a genius, according to Jenny's description, right? Because I'm messy. That's supposed to be the sign of genius. The flip side of that is being organized is a sign of a sick mind, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, but I think it's easier to kind of show you a little bit about my history. So let's see if I can call this up.
Let's all mute ourselves. That will help a little bit on the noise. Okay.
Oh, and please unmute if you have questions, please. So can you guys see my screen? Oh, sorry, everybody just muted themselves.
Yes, we can.
Sorry.
Really nicely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's me. I'm Anne Kupillas, and I think I've always been doing art. So this is my earliest drawing. It's done with magic markers, and I'm 6 years old. That's me in the striped skirt. So that's my family. My mom saved this, and I use this to eat breakfast every morning. So I grew up in a really creative family. My mom was a singer, and my mom and my father were in a band. But my family was kind of like, I would say, middle class, sort of liberal, conservative mix. on Long Island, New York. And so we were always doing art, but there was nothing formal. We didn't go to museums and things like that. My mom had 3 kids and a full-time job. So, but I was always drawing. I always had a pen or a paintbrush in my hand. And this is the earliest drawing I have of my own, which is from when I think I was 11 years old. This is my dog Sunshine. So it's crayon. So I was not encouraged to go into art full time, even though I was always doing art. My parents thought I should have a job that paid the bills. I think we've heard that a lot, right? But it's funny because my parents were creatives, but they wouldn't pay for me to get a fine arts degree. So I went to school for art history and archaeology, and my goal was to work in a museum. And my mom saved all these envelopes I did with watercolors that I would send back from school, so I could see the postmark on this was from my freshman year. I used to just watercolor the envelopes to her. And I never had any formal watercolor training, but in 7th grade, I had an art class. It was a required class, and we had like 1 semester or maybe 1 month or something like that of watercolors. And I think that's when I first fell in love with it. And the teacher showed us some Winslow Homer, stuff like that. I don't show a lot of promise, but I have a little bit of freedom going on in there. So it's nice to see these things that, only your mom saves. So I went to work in museums, and then I went into sales, actually, when I realized museums really don't pay the bills either. And anyway, I also felt like they were like really concerned in publishing and not so much in love with the art. It was kind of disillusioning. It was a business of art, and that's not really why I went into it. But I always had my little watercolor kit, and I would just use it when I traveled. So if I took 2 vacations a year, I was a vacation sketcher, and I'd use pen and ink. So that I kind of always kept up a little bit with watercolor, but just in an ink and wash technique, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And then when I moved to Long Beach, I took a figure drawing class, finally. Actually, in college, my roommate was a fine art major, so I would go with her, even though I wasn't majoring in art. I only actually took maybe 1 art class, and it was like a materials class that you have to take for art history, and so you have to make your own tempera paint. We had to stretch around canvases and stuff. But I would go with my roommate, and I would go to all of the open drawing classes I have. So I have drawings of figure drawing classes, where you pay like $5 and you just show up. I have drawings back from like 1990, 1991. I would just jump into them whenever I could. And then when I moved from New York to Long Beach, I got involved with Studio 1021. As some of you guys might know, Knox Ferrand, or Patrick Ferrand, who's an amazing figurative artist. And I also took a class with Stas over at City College. So that was my first real art class that I took. And that was like in 2009, I believe. And so I would go to as many figure drawing classes as I could. And I would use line and ink wash. And I would water down my ink. So you can kind of see that here. And I wanted to mention this because it's funny, because I'm working a lot more in ink now, and I'll show you that in a little bit. And people say to me, oh, like, this is new for you. And my thought is like, no, I've come full circle. This isn't new for me at all, what I'm doing now. This is how I actually began. And so I would either work with a cartridge pen or a dip pen, and then I would use the ink to make form and detail. And I would either just use black ink or sepia ink. I wasn't really, exploring any, I wasn't doing great explorations or anything. I just would do it like once or twice a week when I could. And I had a full-time job. I was always working and always consumed by work. So whenever I would get out of drawing or painting, I felt like it was really hard to get back into it. But I don't know about you guys, but maybe like many people I've talked to, I just thought I would do watercolors when I retired. I mean, I always thought that in my head, like when I'm 65 or 70 and I get to stop working, I'm going to, take off my bra, put on a muumuu. I literally like said that I've said this so many times to people, and I'm going to finally learn how to do watercolors and I'm going to do them all I want. I didn't say to myself, I'm going to do figure drawing or anything. I always wanted to do watercolors, but I didn't really know what to do with them. And I always heard how hard they were. So I kind of just kept up with this simple medium, and I continued to take my watercolors with me when I went on vacations. Like, so that was really all I would do. And I used a lot of line and wash. You could say it's getting later here now, and now we're in the pandemic. So right before the pandemic, I got sick. And hi, Scott. I saw Scott just jump in. I got sick. I got contracted Lyme disease. So I got bit by a tick and got Lyme disease, but the doctors kept telling me I didn't have Lyme disease. So I got sicker and sicker. And I tried to push my way through and work through it and try to figure out what was wrong with me. But I actually got very ill. In 2018, I could not work anymore. I just couldn't function. I couldn't drive. It was very neurological and also was affecting a lot of different systems in my body. So my doctor put me off of work on disability, and I was getting depressed because I couldn't, not only could I not work, I couldn't do any of the things that I wanted to do, any of my extracurriculars, like reading. I couldn't do reading. I couldn't watch TV or go to movies or even listen to music because I would get all of these neurological sensitivity, it would just flare me. So my doctor said, you've got to have some like relaxing hobby, something that you used to do. And I said, well, I used to like to paint with watercolor. And he said, just do that. Just do that. So I started doing that. And that's how I got back into watercolor. So I still was really relying on the line, but I would like doodle. Like this is a doodle I did in 2019. I think I may have started treatments. I did finally get diagnosed properly and started treatments. Took a very long time to diagnose me, and it took longer to get better. But everybody by then was in the pandemic and everybody was at home. So I didn't feel like any push to go back to work, And as I got better, I was able to draw and paint for longer and longer every day. And I started exploring other media. I was home. Some people were baking bread, right? I was, or doing other things. I was just exploring art and going to the doctor a lot. So, I worked in acrylic. I had really just used painting materials or supplies that I had at home. I didn't go buy anything because nobody was going out. I also did maybe 6 paintings in oil, which didn't make me feel good because there were some, that they weren't water-based oils. So I felt sensitive to the fumes. I even explored with fabric. So I went through a lot of explorations, and then I finally realized that in a way what I was doing was, instead of pushing through the hard stuff with watercolor, I was just detouring. Every time I hit a roadblock in watercolor, I would take a detour rather than just figure out how to crack the code with watercolor. So I decided in 2019 to just go all in on watercolor and really figure it out. And it was all self-taught at that point with some internet classes, I took a lesson with Don Andrews, for example, who's an amazing watercolor artist. And I had some, what I felt like were hits with painting loose and sort of free. And I started also doing live draws during the pandemic. So I started to pick up figure drawing again, but this time on Zoom, which is great if you guys have never done it because you always get the best seat in the house. And I started, because as a watercolor artist, I was always shy. When I would go to figure drawing classes, I would always be the one watercolor artist. Everybody else would be very technical with pencils and measuring, and I would just be doing loose gestures, and I would have 20 things done, and everybody else would have one very nice drawing done. And so I always felt like the odd man out, to be honest. So I loved doing these Zooms, and I started getting more confident with not using as much line. You could still see my line work in watercolor, and For those of you guys who don't know a lot about watercolor, watercolor is really just washes and expressive brushwork. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be line work, but there's a lot of wash and line, or wash and or line. And so, but I started relying less on line at this point, especially to create boundaries and form and things like that. And I did a lot of live draws with like Brooklyn School of Art, and one called the Henley-on-Thames School, which is amazing. And you just get these really great artists. And I would do like 2 or 3 a week. Like I was always, always, always doing these. And I also, through the Henley-on-Thames School, which is in England, theirs is at 7 o'clock. So it was at 11 a.m. here. So it was perfect for me. I also discovered a woman who did animal life drawing. And so she would contract with farms and zoos and wildlife conservators and take a video camera to these places. And then you would paint the animals in movement, which was also really interesting to me, as I've always loved animals. And it also was like super challenging. It's really hard to paint things in motion. But it really flexed my skills. And you don't have time to do accurate drawings. They're all really gestures. So I did a lot of these. I also highly recommend them. This group is now called Elephant in the Room. So if you want to paint animals, or you just want to do something different, check out Elephant in the Room or Henley-on-Thames. They're really, really good, and they pay their subjects very well, which a lot of the places try to do. And they get really great models. So I had done a lot of animal life drawing, and I had a joint show coming up with another artist, and she got sick and had to bow out of it. So the gallery said to me, it's 2 weeks away. Can you put something up? And I said, I have a lot of animal drawings. And so I ended up with my first animal show. And I had, I think, 50 or 60 paintings. I also put up a lot of my sketches, which was really the first time I had shown anybody my unfinished work. And it got me out of my shell a little bit. I also had another show in Florida of pretty much the same paintings and drawings. I, by the way, had sort of participated here and there in group shows before, and I had one solo show with my figure drawings. Because my brother owned a gallery. So he featured me, and it was pretty successful, but not enough to like quit my day job, you guys. Anyway, I had a really lovely show. Almost all of my work was either in pastel or in watercolor. And then I also got the chance to be in a solo show in a gallery with my friend artist Stephanie Hahn. And I did an abstract show. Because I had to cancel my travel plans, like a lot of people did during the pandemic, I thought I'll just paint my travels. But I didn't want to paint them literally. I wanted to paint sort of how I felt about things, so I didn't look at my photographs. I actually lived in England for 4 years too, right before I got sick. And I traveled all over Europe and the Middle East. And I didn't paint once in any of these areas. I was too busy working.
Whereabouts in England did you live?
I lived in Northamptonshire.
What?
It's about 40 minutes north on the train of London. So yeah, I really loved it. And I love the landscapes. And I've always had like not a full photographic memory, but I have we're all visual, right? So I didn't have to look at photos. Some of these places were really sort of burned into my brain. And so my first solo show of landscapes was called Dreamscapes, and it was a lot of solo work. And I'm also starting to paint more boldly here and juicier. And this was like in 2021, I believe. And I just continued with the abstract explorations for a while. So I'll paint anything and everything. I don't feel tied to any one subject matter or medium. And I think part of that comes from teaching, because I'm always asked to demonstrate different things. And so I'm not tied to one thing. If a subject interests me, I will paint it. I have best friends who live up in the mountains on the way to Mammoth. And so I go up there a lot to paint. And I also lost my studio around this time. So I asked around, and some people said the best place to show your artwork is with plein air groups. They do a lot of shows, and it's like a big deal in Southern California. So I joined the Southern California plein air group, Soka Papa, and I started to get out more, not only on my own, but also with others. And I really love painting outside. I don't consider myself a plein air painter, but it is a big part of my practice. I don't always finish my works, but I do a lot of studies out in the open air. And sometimes I'll finish them, like here, this is cows in Lone Pine. And other times I'll come back to the studio and either finish them or just do a whole like series of explorations. And again, I was like really purely doing watercolor at this point. And I also paint closer to home. I paint Heisler Park, Catalina. This is Two Harbors at Catalina. You could see the time frame because my hair is gray hair now. I let it go gray. And then I went back to England, and my students were asking me about plein air, so it was a really easy jump to going out on my own and going out with a club that I belong to taking students out. So as part of my practice, I have like a side business, which I call Eat, Paint, Live. And I take up to 12 artists out on different locations, and I plan the whole thing. So all you have to do is show up with your paints. And we've done the Cotswolds for a week, which was really great. Here's some pictures of us in Oxford, where we went to like 3 different castles. We stayed on a farm. I've taken groups to Avalon on Catalina Island. We painted the buffalo. We painted underwater. We've also gone to Ojai twice, and it's a different group each time, but I have some regulars. So here I've arranged a private drawing session on an alpaca farm. It's really fun to paint with other people, and also is able to teach people how to paint animals in motion, which is something I had, practiced for a really long time. And then we also went on boats. We've gone up to the mountains twice. And then last year I was featured at a Blueberry House Gallery, which is up in Nova Scotia. And here's how I got into acrylic, because they asked me to paint them a dozen acrylics for a gallery show. I was inaugural show of the opening of this gallery. So I went up there and plein air painted and ate a lot of lobster, and I did 12 acrylics and also did watercolors, all of the local landscape. And I didn't have any idea what I'm doing in acrylics, nothing. But I just kept at it, and now I love it. I'm still doing it. So this is obviously not Nova Scotia, but this is a recent painting I did of Crystal Cove. That is Nova Scotia. And then here's one I'm working on right now, which is there's a flock of white pelicans right now over at Huntington Central Park. So I'm almost finished with this one. By the way, I like to paint on panel. So I'll show you that. I like to paint on these cradled panels. I really like the drag, the texture of the wood. And I like them being 3-dimensional. So I see some comments in the chat, but I'm going to get to them after. Okay. So then last year, I was lucky enough to get an artist residency at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. This is where Georgia O'Keeffe used to live. And it was incredible. So I was here for 3 weeks, had my own studio, which was attached to the casita. So I would wake up, eat breakfast, go for a hike and paint outside. And then I'd come back, have lunch, take a shower, have lunch, and then do the rest of the work when it was too hot in the studio. And it was just amazing. And we had 8 other artists there who were incredible. And we all really liked each other. So we'd go out together and go horseback riding and things like that. Here's me on a hike where I almost bumped into a mountain lion and a raccoon. Started singing on the trail after that. I love this picture because I took white gouache out with me, and here's how I got interested in using gouache in my work, because I realized my watercolor painting was like drying too fast on the paper. So I started adding gouache, and I think I borrowed a tube from one of the other artists. Many of the other artists that were in our group of 9 were mixed media artists. And so my brain started just exploding with ideas and wanting to try some of those things on my own, like nothing literal, but wanting to play with different materials in my practice. And like here's one with my friend Kate, who's a collage artist. I produced a huge amount of work for during the residency. Not that we had to. There was no pressure at all, actually. I would recommend this residency to anybody. It's wonderful. We didn't have to give back anything, but I produced so much. And I had a showcase of it quite recently of 60 works. And then here's some work I continued to paint in. This is acrylic on wood. This one's gouache. This is a large scale watercolor. I've recently started mounting my watercolors. Here's a picture of somebody touching one. So I mount it on board after it's finished, and then I protect it from UV rays with like Krylon spray varnish, and I also use Gamlin cold wax. So no glass, which is amazing. You can kind of see it. And then I got back into inks again. So I started using inks, but again with the dip pen, but instead using watercolor instead of just monochromatic, and also gouache. So I started keeping this little notebook, which I'll share with you guys. And then from that notebook, I've decided to take that notebook, and I developed a book. So I actually have a coffee table book that I'm going to be publishing. I want to show you guys a little bit about it. Oops, sorry about that. Am I doing okay on time, or am I over?
You're fine.
Okay. So this is my little Ghost Ranch notebook, and I shared this with people at my open studio tour. So this was really just notes for myself, but I can't help but doodle. But this was things like the gate code, to the private parts of the ranch that only the artists were allowed in. And then at night, like we didn't have Wi-Fi or anything or any cell phone reception in the casitas. So I would just go back, and with a little nightlight, I would fill in color from my travel kit. And then the artist started asking me if I was publishing this. And I said, no, this is just for myself. But then I started to think about a project. And so I did do 18 paintings, and I have contracted with a photographer to photograph them for me and make a coffee table book. So I've done all the research, and I'm going to begin this next week. So I'm really excited because none of this is watercolor, by the way. It's all gouache or gouache and ink. And can I give you the gate code? Sure, they probably changed it by now. But I'm very excited about this. I've done like little self-published books before, but nothing like this. I mean, it's going to have the same kind of linen cover and bookmark, and I'm very excited about that. And then I like the idea so much that I started a new one. So this is my newest project. Because I go up to the mountains so often in the Eastern Sierra, I've just started capturing my favorite scenes up in the Eastern Sierra in this book. And I already have one that won't make it to the published version because it's not that great, but it's in the same vein. And it's, all sort of recognizable spots. I did show this to someone who lives up there, and they said, oh yeah, it's quite evocative. Like you've hit all the spots. So it's still a work in progress. But I'm really excited about this. I haven't shown this to anybody other than like maybe 3 people before. So this is this is the Alabama Hills, if you guys are familiar with up here. And so I'm still working on it. It's not finished. This is Main Street in Lone Pine. Thank you, Annie. I just feel a real freedom when I work with the ink and the color. I usually do the ink first, and then I do the color, and then I do more ink if I want to. But there's something about using one of these bamboo dip pens and the way it scratches across watercolor paper, textured watercolor paper, that's just so satisfying. And then adding that thicker paint in, and as you can see, I added in when the ink is wet sometimes, and sometimes I add in when the ink is dry. So as Annie mentioned, the goal is for watercolor, and I think any water-based media, is freshness. That's my goal, is for it to be fresh and to look as if it was done really quickly. They're not all done really quickly, but the brush strokes are quick and decisive. And I think and the layering is done thoughtfully. So I may do one layer quickly, let it dry, do another layer quickly, let it dry. So it takes quite a long time sometimes to do the artworks, but the goal is always to have them look fresh. And when one of my artist friends tells me that my watercolors look fresh, that's the biggest compliment. So that's kind of the long way around how I got to painting and how I got to being an artist full time. And also how I've kind of come full circle back to my drawing. I just started yesterday teaching a drawing class. It's a 10-week drawing course. Because I noticed that a lot of my students who are painting are plateauing, and it's their lack of drawing skills that are holding them back. I didn't talk a lot about it, but I really love teaching. Art saved me, at a point when my life was really low. It was a really hard time. And so many good questions. Thank you. Yeah, so if I can help anybody jump into watercolor or improve I haven't taught anything other than drawing in watercolor, by the way. I'm not teaching acrylic or anything anytime soon. But if I can help somebody find satisfaction in their practice faster than I did, I'm very happy. It's really very satisfying to me, very rewarding. So okay, there's so many questions in here. Should I do them in order, I guess?
Let's see. Go ahead and go through them. Some of them are not really necessarily.
Some of them are just comments.
A couple of directed at me or something.
Okay, like Elizabeth, you asked, do you ever use water-soluble graphite pencils? I've tried it. I don't like it. I feel like they muddy up the brightness of the colors. And in general, even though you did see some sort of darker works, I paint most of the time from a place of happiness, and I like a high key color scheme. I like a high key value scheme usually, and so I find that the graphite kind of can dirty up the brighter colors that I like to use, so I don't use them anymore. Usually I use a 4B or a 6B pencil, and I often will erase some of that pencil and then keep some of it because I like to see the hand of the artist. Good question. How many classes do I teach a month? It varies. I only teach maybe 3 classes a quarter at Art Supply Warehouse, so maybe 1 class, not even 1 class a month there. But I do a watercolor happy hour on Zoom. That's every Friday, and I've been doing it for 5 years now. So every Friday I have from 4 to 5 o'clock, and I would love for any of you to join. It's free. We just paint a different subject for an hour. Just a great way to kick off the weekend. If you're interested, just email me. And like I said, it's free, and it's how serious can you get in 1 hour of painting, Scott and Mary, who are here, they can tell you it's a lot of fun, and it's a great group. So I'll teach that. And then I currently teach for Cal State's OLLI program, the OSHA Lifelong Learning, which is their senior program. So I don't teach every semester with them. Sometimes I have like a bigger project for myself or a show coming up where I just know I can't. And so that's once a week. And then quite often I do teach same-day workshops for plein air painting. And I have a lot of stuff up on my YouTube that you can go look at for some of the classes I've taught. So maybe I would say if you count the happy hours, 12, 13 classes a month, something like that. Can I give you the login info for my Friday class? Yes, but I need your emails because I send out the reference photo every week. So I'm happy to share the login. It's the same login every week. But if you want the reference photo, you've got to email me, and then I'll put you on the list. So I'll put that in the chat.
Put your email in the chat so anyone who can.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. And then did I miss any questions here?
Well, this
teaching marketing skills. Oh, that's so great. Thanks, Andrea. I actually, because I did marketing for so long in my other jobs, I really do enjoy marketing, and I have done consulting with a number of artists on how to market themselves better with Instagram, Facebook, how to combine accounts, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm pretty inexpensive when it comes to that. So happy to do that on a one-on-one basis. I feel like everyone is different and everyone's at a different stage, so that's why I do it one-on-one.
Liz asked whether or not we could put a list of the online places that you'd mentioned. Maybe you happen to have a list of them rather than me listening to the whole thing again and seeing if I
Yeah.
can figure that out. That would be, if you would email those to me, please.
You
when
mean
you
like
have
the
a moment.
online classes I take?
No, what was it? What, Liz, what did you have in mind?
Sorry. Yes, the ones that you were taking in England and like all those online
Yes.
classes that you were
Oh,
doing.
I'm happy to share those. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was great. Thanks.
Yep. I'll send those to Jenny and Annie, and then they
Yeah.
can share them with the group.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Okay. I see Bets. Thanks, Bets. Any other questions?
Anyone have
Oh, I
anything?
won my first one. I can share this with you guys. I won my first place ribbon last night at the
Oh,
Huntington Beach Art
congratulations.
League. Thank you. I don't win a lot of things. I don't enter a lot of things, but I don't win very much. I won my first like real prize in a juried show last year for a gouache, no less, something I just picked up. But that was still quite satisfying because, as we all know, one part of our practice informs the other. But I won a first place for those persimmons in watercolor last night, so I'm really proud of that.
Oh, well done.
Thank you. And I think that's all I wanted to tell you about. There's so much, but I really appreciate that you guys had me here to talk to you. Thank you so much. I hope to see you guys again soon and to join the club.
Yes, we'll. I think recruitment's open in a couple of months, so we'll be in touch. And oh, Liz, you have your hand up again too.
Yeah, do we have time for more questions? Yes.
Do we have any? Yeah, we do. Yes.
Okay, great. So, how do you balance between teaching, producing, marketing? Like, how do you keep keep all those plates up in the air effectively?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, for me, the hardest thing actually is doing more abstract work while I'm teaching because it's hard for me to exactly. It's like one thing is intuitive and the other I have to think explicitly about how do I teach this. So it's not just that I have a hard time teaching abstract, which I don't teach very many abstract classes, but I also have a hard time like toggling back and forth. So when I'm trying to do a lot more abstract, my abstracts are always representational, but sometimes I really like blow out the representation, as you saw with some of those real watery ones. And those are really hard for me when I'm teaching. So when I'm feeling like I really am missing that and I want to get back into that, I have to pull back on my teaching. But other than that, in a general sense, I keep a large calendar. And, it's my main calendar and it's on paper because I'm so visual. And so I will look at that calendar and I'll block out time for if I have a show coming up or some kind of project, and I'll block out time before that so that I make sure that I still have time to market and teach, and that I just don't say yes to like too many things. And I used to paint every single day. I used to feel like I needed the muscle memory and I had to paint every single day in order to continue to progress. Not for output, but just for my skill level, my confidence. I'm at the point with watercolor where I don't feel like I have to do that anymore. So I can do like one day of painting and then one day of marketing, for example. And I sell on Etsy. And so I have days set aside every week where I don't paint and I do all of that admin stuff. I just call it general admin. It could be packing up artwork. So like if I sell a piece of art, I don't go run out that same day and pack it up. Like I have one day of the week where it's Thursdays and I get all of that done. And so I know it can wait and I can keep to my creative schedule as well, because if you don't block time for your creative schedule, all you're doing is selling and marketing.
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Question, please.
Yes, yes.
And you showed us some watercolors that you painted on wood panel. What kind of, how did that go? And what kind of finish did you finish it with, like
That's a good
satin?
question. Yeah, so I tried to put a workshop together with the Art Supply Warehouse, but we only had like one or two people sign up, so we had to cancel it. But I'm going to try to do it again. It's actually really easy to do. So I paint on arches paper. I just paint on regular arches. And when it's dry, bone dry, that's when I mount it. So I'll mount it
Oh,
on a cradled panel and I use gesso, acrylic or acrylic gel medium. You could use either to mount it and then weight it down and leave it overnight to dry.
mhm.
And then I trim the edges. And then I use 4 coats of spray varnish. I use Krylon satin finish, but
Wow.
you can alternate, and you can use fewer coats, I suppose.
Mhm.
I let the coats dry in between. So I'll spray it, let it dry for 15 minutes, spray it again. And then I like to use Gamblin cold wax on top. I feel
Hmm.
like it's just so luscious, but it's also adds to the UV resistance. I put
Mhm.
6 paintings that were like tests, things I didn't care for. I put them outside in the sun for 30 days and they didn't fade at
Oh,
all.
wow.
So, as you guys know, watercolor will fade to like nothing in that time. So, I felt like, okay, now I can go ahead and I can sell my artwork this way, the good pieces. It was frightening. It was really scary. It was actually Eileen McCullough, who's an amazing watercolor artist. I'm sure you guys probably know her. She's local in Huntington Beach. She's the one who told me, oh, people are doing this. And it scared me. I said, no way. I'm not wetting any of my paintings, like in any way. And then I was doing these plein air shows with my plein air club, and I would have people come up to my booth, collectors, and they would say to me, oh, I love watercolors. I just love them, but I don't collect them. So I asked them, why not? And they said, because they don't look right compared next to my other artwork. Well, I don't like the glass. And some people told me there's like a psychological barrier with the glass
Mhm.
as well as actual glare. But if you get museum glass, there's no glare. So it's just they didn't like the look of it and it felt different to them. So that's when I went back and I just started researching these products and testing them. And like I said, I went through a test on about 6 of them. And it's actually not that hard to do. Brienne Brown, who is a watercolor artist and does plein air painting, she has 2 videos on YouTube and she teaches you looking at her how to do it, which is great if anyone wants to try. She also is a plein air painter. So she mounts a pristine white piece of arches and then we'll take that to a plein air competition. So, like if you're doing a quick draw or some other event, so she actually doesn't have to like frame it under glass or anything. She can paint it on mounted, and then just in the time they have allotted, just spray it, let that dry, and then she could sell it like that. The trick is that you have to use a thicker paper when you do that because you're going to be adding water to it, and it might peel up from the board. So in
Like
that case,
300,
you have to
three
use
hundred
like
or
a
so.
yeah, like a 300-pound piece of paper for that. I
Yeah, I
haven't
think
tried that yet because I don't do quick draw. I have plenty of time to come back to my studio, decide if it's any
Hmm.
good, and then if I want to, I can mount it.
yeah, I've been using the Krylon since 2010, and a lot of my paintings go out at booths for all weekend in the sunshine, and they never fade.
That's so
Nice.
great, Seeker. It's so funny to watch people who are like, is that watercolor? Because it looks like watercolor, but like it doesn't have any glass on it. And I tell them,
Yeah.
you can touch it. You can touch it. And so they do, and they're like amazed by it. So, and it's cheaper, it's much less expensive. And I love myself a floating frame. So I just like that mid-century sort of look. And so
Mm.
it's really nice to put those cradled panels, but you don't have to use a cradle panel. You could mount on gator board. You can mount on any surface, really. And also, Jenny, I don't know if you know, but Winsor Newton came out with a UV spray. I think
Mhm.
it's a
Haven't seen
matte
that one.
finish. Yeah, so I haven't tried it yet because I still have a lot left of the cans that I have. but I'm assuming it's maybe a 1 coat rather than 3 or 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one. I always go with 3 coats sprayed and then 3 coats brushed.
Oh, nice. Okay. And what do
Which
you
I-
use
I-
to
well,
brush
I-
yours?
Excuse me?
What do
Oh,
you
well,
brush
I-
on?
Well, I used to use a mix of self-leveling clear gel and matte medium, but they stopped making self-leveling, so it's just a mix of matte
Yeah.
medium and gloss medium, 50-50. And it's in
Golden,
Sorry, you
Jen.
have to.
Do you
Yeah,
use golden?
Golden, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we all have our secret recipes, right?
Yeah.
And I met somebody else in Arizona who also had watercolors, and he did some kind of wax as well. I don't know if it was the one that you were using, but there was another method too. So there are several methods out there of protecting the watercolors.
Absolutely. And just like with the oil painting, I mean, once it's all dry, if you have it on the wall for a while and you need to dust it, you can dust it. It will come
Yeah.
clean.
Hmm.
Yeah, good question.
I just want to thank you. I had emailed you about possible exhibition locations, and you sent me one. If there are any others, we are always looking for exhibition space, and it sounds like you're pretty knowledgeable about where we might be able to go as an organization, of course.
Thank you, Diane.
thank
Yeah, I'll if I think of any more, I'll definitely let you know.
Great.
You could
Thanks.
put them in an email to me along with those links if you like.
Nice.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Anne, this is Scott. How are you?
Good, Scott. How are you?
I have a quick question for clarity.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Ada. Oh, you said that when you were in Avalon that you were painting underwater.
Yes.
How challenging is it when you're doing watercolors underwater?
Well, we were in a submarine, so it was quite dry.
Oh, you left out the submarine part.
I left that out, didn't I?
Thank you for the clarification.
It was really abstract. That's all I can say.
That
Very
would be
wet.
that would be one hell of a wash underwater, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Anne.
You're welcome.
Amazing.